Hi, I'm Alexis Javieras and we'll have a behind-the-scenes look at the film Agrinoui. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the very talented people that helped to create this film, and a warm thank you to the many festivals for selecting and awarding the film. These planning steps gave me many chances to revise things before I moved the project into production. During this phase, I let the technical implementation of each shot play a role when I was deciding on how each scene would play out. With this film, I wanted to test out several ideas about developing efficient production methods. Typically, at the onset of a production there is a discussion of finding a balance between cost and quality. When cost goes down, quality usually follows. I wanted the quality to go up, and I wanted to keep the team small. To achieve this, I came up with an efficient workflow. It took 2 3D artists, 3 computers, and a year in the production phase. The experiment was successful as I didn't need to activate my backup plan, which included the help of more designers and the use of a render farm. First, let's go back and see how some initial ideas took form. Writing is rewriting. I'm sure you have heard this one before. Therefore, I'm showing this scene where some flamingos have a funny conversation. This scene was removed because it didn't help the story evolve fast enough. With this image, I saw this interesting color contrast, but then I decided to use less saturated colors because I didn't want the flamingo to overshadow the other characters. This is the less vibrant color palette I decided to use. I ended up removing this scene as well because I felt that the story was losing its focus whenever I devoted screen time to characters other than the horse Olympia. In essence, it was a process of trying out ideas and keeping the best ones. This is an example where I actually added an environment. After sketching the storyboard scene of Olympia walking on a road, I proceeded with drawing the paintings on the right side of the screen. I repainted the ground, and it immediately became clear that I should add the Salt Lake environment to the list of the sets. Olympia walking on the Salt Lake combined with the low angle of the sun gave a more fitting feeling of solitude. In the middle column we see frames of the 3D animatic that I made later on, and at the bottom there is a frame of the resulting film. These are some steps of improvements each character had to go through. At this early stage, I experimented with several types of lighting and texture styles, so these decisions would later affect the look of the entire film. At this point, I hadn't decided on the rendering engine yet. At first, I tried using a very fast scanline renderer with a toon shader, but I ended up preferring a more realistic lighting setup, which was slow and would require a render farm, in other words, a cluster of computers to help render out the frames. So I did some further testing with a new render technology that processes the image in the graphics card instead of the CPU. The initial results were encouraging, even with the software being quite buggy at the time. In spite of the technical limitations, I went with the new technology, which gave me a tenfold speed increase within a single PC. With each creation of planning material, I was able to make more and more refined improvements. The initial drawing of the racing track called for spectator seats. The concept art in the top right helped me decide on a less artificial and open field. The 3D animatic in the middle was crucial for deciding upon the form of each stage, as well as the timing and framing of each shot. When I was drawing the storyboard, I hadn't decided yet about the size of the characters and whether some of them would stand up on 2 legs. Having the characters designed before I started with the 3D animatic allowed me to position everything better. In the scene on the left of the screen, many of the ruins are copies of the same object. This sequence appears to have 13 columns when there are actually 6 identical columns that are repositioned for each shot. The crowd in the right consists of many duplicates of a few spectators. I love taking my own reference pictures. For all the photographic needs of this project, I found it very satisfying to take my camera to capture images as I study the textures in their natural conditions. Just walking outside my studio gave me many surfaces of plants, trees, mountains and grounds. In cases such as the moon, we see an image on a plane. Planes like this are very light to compute. For the film Agrinoui, I have made extensive use of relief surfaces. In the film, if you saw the trees, the plants, and the mountains from the side, you'd notice that they are almost flat surfaces with sharp edges. The reason we see a theatrical flat on wheels on the right is because of the way I treated these objects. I would often change their position between shots and even during long panning shots. I drew sketches of top views while making notes about the positioning of things. The simplest stage was the night scene at the beach because all the action happened in one place. In the rest of the stages, the characters were moving over large areas, and this required a special treatment. So, what do all these shots have in common? One thing is a road, but more importantly, they come from the same set design file. I was trying to push the boundaries of how large a stage could be. We have establishing shots, dialogue scenes, and traveling along the road, all in one 3D file. The stage changes form as we scrub the timeline, just to adapt to the needs of each shot. Watching the stage from the top view, you'd see mountains snapping into several positions as the camera also changes position. Here we see the top view concept drawing of the stage with the mountain roads. This framework was developed to accommodate sequences of separate actions into one flexible working file. Creating these huge stages enabled practical revision cycles because I would typically leave a PC to render out a long sequence overnight. The next day we would start working on the corrections and the rendering cycle would be repeated until the results were fine. This is the top view of all the stages in the 3D animatic. I was able to preview, cut and edit the entire film from within this single 3D file in real time. The two 3D artists had two distinct roles. Animator Sakis Kaleas gave motion to the characters while I worked on the environments and cameras. Sakis worked on scenes that contained multiple characters within a lightweight environment substitute. Whenever I wanted to make a full preview of the sequence, I would first merge the high-quality stage with the characters. This tactic kept both our computers responsive and we could work on the same scene at the same time. With the film Agrinoui, I took advantage of a simple hardware solution by trying not to work against the limitations in order to keep the efficiency high. Each frame took approximately a couple of minutes to render, when it is not uncommon for feature films to need the equivalent of 5 hours. I hope you enjoyed this video. Many of the techniques shown here are part of a research project about stage design in animated films. The research isn't over yet, so if you have any remarks, please leave a comment. My name is Alexis Javiaras and my project is Technology, Efficiency and Speed Compliant. #support Nollywood.